Hi, my name is Heather Clark, and I'm a graduate student at Morningside College. I'm also a middle school special education teacher. My research was on the effect of midline cross-brain physical activities breaks on middle school special education student academic achievement in reading and writing. This research was needed because there's inconsistent data on the approaches to help increase academic achievement for students receiving special education services. There's also minimal research and scholarly articles on midline cross-brain physical activities, which I'll go into further in my literature review. I chose this topic because my students in my classroom are having trouble sitting still and really benefit from movement. My thought was that these midline cross-brain physical activities would provide the movement my students need, but also help them increase their academic achievement, improve the goal areas on their IEPs. My research was grounded in two theories. The first theory is brain-based learning. According to Connell, 2009, brain-based learning supports diverse learners, like those in special education, maintaining that all students are capable of learning. Kane and Kane's brain-based learning also state that the left and the right sides of the brain do play different roles, but are meant to work as one. This is also a key aspect of midline cross-brain physical activities. The constructivist learning theory is also a part of my research and grounded in my study. According to Wang, 2011, students are active builders of knowledge. Oltner, 2012, looked at Piaget and Dewey's view of constructivism, which stressed that learning is an active process and learners must construct their own knowledge. Hence, education and action are connected, and learners should not be passive. This is also a key aspect of my study. When looking into past research, I looked into areas that claim to help special education students improve academic achievement. The first area I looked at was medication. Medication is not available to all. According to Laneberg et al., 2011, stimulant and non-stimulant medication has helped students improve their social behaviors, but has not improved academic achievement. Additionally, according to Pontifex et al., 2014, and Safer and Allen, 1973, the long-term effects of stimulant and non-stimulant medication are still unknown. The second area I looked into was inclusive co-taught classrooms. According to Packard et al., 2011, oftentimes the special education teacher feels like an aide, and there's not enough planning given for the general education teacher and the special education teacher to work together and plan effectively. Additionally, according to Packard et al., students with disabilities often stand out more in co-taught classrooms as the content level gets harder, and this is especially true at the middle and high school levels. There's also inconsistent data in regards to the effectiveness of co-teaching. Walsh's 2012 and St. John and Bavo's 2015 reported that general education students actually had a negative effect in the co-taught classroom, even though special education students had a positive effect. Additionally, according to Holcutt's 1996 study, it showed that special education teachers weren't affected either way in the co-taught classroom. Yet in Packard et al.'s 2011 study, it said that there was no significant academic gain regardless of whether a student was in a co-taught or self-contained setting. This is a lot of inconsistent data and especially concerning for me as a special education teacher. The next area I looked at was physical activity. According to Tom Pornowski et al., 2008, physical activity has shown a positive effect on a child's executive functioning skills. Additionally, according to Everhart et al., 2012, studies on physical activities have actually been associated with improving academic performance for those with disabilities. The catch here is that the type of physical activity, the duration of the physical activity, or the actual connection between the physical activity and a child's cognitive skills have yet to be determined, which is why more research is needed. That's when I started looking into midline cross-brain physical activities. According to Corso, 1997, there are three types of midlines: the transverse midline, which splits your body upper and lower half, the sagittal midline, which splits your body's left and right half, and the frontal midline, which splits your body's front and back halves. According to Woodward and Serberg, 1999, children with disabilities often struggle with their gross and fine motor skills and tend to avoid crossing their body's midline. This is especially concerning when Corso 1999 reports that children who lack coordination or have minimal ability to cross their body's midline often have poor organizational skills and bad work habits. Due to this inconsistent data and minimal research out there, my study was needed to see the effect of midline cross-brain physical activities on special education students. The purpose of this study was to collect data on midline cross-brain physical activities and determine its effectiveness. The independent variable were midline cross-brain physical activities breaks. The dependent variable was a level of academic achievement, specifically in reading and writing. Quantitative research was used to determine the effectiveness. My goal here was to help improve the education and adequate yearly progress of special education students. Due to the fact that these activities require no training, it has a huge impact for educators, students, and parents alike. The result of this study could help improve academic achievement for all special education students. Specifically for me as an educator, this study could benefit me by determining if midline cross-brain physical activities can help my students improve their academic achievement, specifically for reading and writing. The participants in the study ranged in age from 11 to 14 in grades 6 through 8th. 2/3 were male and 1/3 was female. Ethnicities included Caucasian, African American, and Hispanic. Socioeconomic status of the students at the school where the research was done was 50% or more free and reduced lunch. No incentive was offered, and the students were assigned randomly to the experimental and control groups. The only requirement was that they had an IEP and goals in reading and writing. The sample size was 34 students, with 14 being 6th graders, 11 being 7th graders, and 9 being 8th graders. Kansas University strategies, as well as 6+1 traits of writing lessons, were used throughout the study. This was also the curriculum adopted by the participating schools district. The reading assessment used was Jamestown. This is a grade level passage that contained approximately 400 words with 10 multiple choice comprehension questions. There were 3 possible answer choices for each question. The norms for the reading comprehension were 80%. The norms for reading fluency were between 133 and 144 correct words per minute, and for reading accuracy was 95% accuracy. For writing, students were given 10 minutes to write after being given 1 minute to think. Then their writing was assessed on a 6+1 traits of writing 5-point rubric. The norms for this was 24 out of 30 points on the rubric, which is 80%. The special education teachers involved in this study met as a professional learning community to discuss each assessment to ensure the reliability and validity of them. The class structure was 45 minutes and met every other day. On assessment days, students were given a break, given the writing assessment, given a break, and given the reading assessment, and then given another break. On non-assessment days, students were given a break, completed a writing lesson, given a break, completed a reading lesson, and then given a break. Each break was 3 minutes and included 2 parts each. Therefore, each part was a minute and a half. Break 1, part 1, consisted of knees to opposite elbows. Part 2, students sat cross-legged on the floor and passed a cue when they were back to back. Break 2, part 1, consisted of students bending their legs backwards and touching their opposite feet to their opposite hand. Part 2 was students standing up in a whole group in a circle, passing a cue, reaching high and low. In break 3, part 1, students bent down to reach their opposite hand to their opposite foot. And then in part 2, students traced figure 8 with both hands on the board. This study was an 8-week experimental research design study. Data was compiled on a spreadsheet and then analyzed using between group independent samples t-tests to compare both the control and the experimental groups. Here's the pre-assessment data. Looking at the pre-assessment data, you can see that the written language assessment is already significantly different for both groups, and therefore no further analysis was needed. Therefore, due to no further analysis needed in the written expression, the hypothesis then became when students with IEPs in middle school participate in midline cross-brain physical activities breaks, the level of academic achievement in reading comprehension, fluency, and accuracy would increase. This was not confirmed on a statistical significance level. However, the experimental group did make slightly higher gains than the control group, which I'll explain further in a minute. Here's the post-assessment data for reading comprehension, fluency, and accuracy. Looking at the p-values, you can see that they are greater than 0.05, meaning they are not statistically significant. However, when looking at the means for the control and experimental group, you can see that the experimental group did make slightly higher gains. For reading comprehension, the control group made a gain of 1%. The experimental group made a gain of 7%. For reading fluency, the control group made a gain of 2 correct words per minute, where the experimental group made a gain of 5 correct words per minute. And then looking at reading accuracy, the control group made a gain of 3.5%, whereas the experimental group made a gain of 6%. As you can see, the experimental group did make slightly higher gains than the control group, even though it's not statistically significant. When looking at the implications for this study, the first implication is higher engagement and participation. According to Budd et al. 2008, students are having more difficulties focusing in the classroom, yet educators involved in my study reported that students had higher motivation and participation in lessons after midline cross-brain physical activities breaks. This implication could indicate that this study aligns with the constructivist learning theory as well, because it stresses motivation according to Huava et al. 2015. The second implication was less off-task behaviors. This implication aligns with Ma et al.'s 2014 study, indicating that there's a positive correlation between physical activity and on-task behavior. This implication also aligns with Budd et al.'s 2008 study that midline cross-brain physical activity movements have the biggest effect when ongoing attention is required. The first limitation of this study includes the participants. There were a limited number of participants with a limited age range, and participants' disabilities also varied widely, even though their academic IEP goals were similar. Therefore, in the future, I would recommend a larger population of participants with an expanded age range for future studies. I would also look into specific participants' disabilities and having them being tracked to see if midline cross-brain physical activities have a stronger effect on different types of disabilities in students. The next limitation was time. It was only 8 weeks. Students only met every other day for 45 minutes. In the future, I strongly recommend that this study last an entire year or longer, because according to the constructivist learning theory, learning takes time. Additionally, reading and written language assessments were also a limitation. The reading assessments were old, from 1989, and the written language rubric was very subjective. Therefore, in the future, I suggest that studies include more current assessments that are not subjective. Reliability was also a limitation. There were multiple instructor and participant absences, and classes met at different times of the day. All instruction in the future and midline cross-brain physical activities breaks should be at the same time of day with the same instructor to ensure more fidelity. The final limitation was multiple types of midline cross-brain physical activities used. In the future, I think it should be broken down with transverse, sagittal, and frontal in order to see what type of movement best affects students, or if one affects more than the other or less than the other. Thank you for listening to my presentation. I look forward to hearing your comments. Here are the references used throughout this presentation. Thank you.